come to order. The local planning agency is an advisory board of citizens appointed by the City Commission. This board is comprised of volunteers who represent the thoughts and concerns of the community. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to make recommendations to the City Commission regarding each item on the agenda. Tonight we'll be conducting public hearings, therefore this meeting is open to the public. Anyone in the audience who wishes to give testimony to any of the items on the agenda will need to be sworn in by the city's business manager, Joan McHale. This swearing-in process will occur after tonight's first agenda item, which will be the approval of the draft minutes from the last 2 LPA meetings. Please be aware that this local planning agency is not a quasi-judicial board and therefore has no final decision-making power. Our procedures, however, are structured in a quasi-judicial manner for the benefit of those who come before it. Tonight's format will be as follows. I will introduce each item on the agenda, after which the city representative will present information about it. Thereafter, the members of the local planning agency will respond to the city representative. Finally, anyone from the public may come forward. Those from the public wishing to give testimony will need to approach the dais, identify themselves, and then utilize the speaker's lectern in order for their comments to be recorded. Upon the conclusion of the public hearing, the local planning agency will consider the evidence before it and will vote on that agenda item. That voice vote is the rendition of the order of the board, and there will be no written decision issued by the board. For the record, Charles Fortin, Steve Sandberg, James Roberts, and are not able to be here tonight, and their absences are excused. The first item on tonight's agenda is the approval of both draft minutes from March 9th and March 22nd LPA meetings. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the March 9th minutes? I had several, and I've already communicated those to city staff. Are there any others? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the March 9th minutes, draft minutes as corrected?
I'll make a motion for approval of the March 9th meeting minutes as corrected.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the March 9th draft minutes as correct. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign. It's moved and seconded to accept those minutes as corrected, and we'll move on to the March 22nd LPA meeting minutes. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to those minutes? Hearing none, I did give some corrections to city staff, so they have been corrected. Is there a motion to approve the minutes, accept the minutes as corrected?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the draft minutes of March 22nd as correct. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? Thank you. The city's business manager, Joan McHale, will now swear in all persons wishing to speak to or give testimony to tonight's agenda items.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is application LUP-ZO-22-03. City-initiated land use plan amendment and rezoning of 1900 San Mateo Drive, number C, number D, and number E, Hammock Park additions. Has anyone had any ex parte communication regarding this application? Hearing none, I'd like to turn this over then to Mr. DePasqua, Assistant Director of Community Development.
Good evening. Again, yes, Joseph DePasqua on behalf of the Community Development Department. What I'd like to do is walk you through a brief presentation on this request, which is a city-initiated request. So the application is application LUP-ZO-22-03. There's 3 parcels that are involved in this application at 1900 San Mateo Drive. They're labeled as number C, D, and E. The applicant, as I mentioned, is the city of Dunedin. That's the owner and applicant. The city manager submitted this application on behalf of the city, along with Vince Gizzi, our Director of Parks and Recreation. We have two ordinance for your consideration this evening. Ordinance 22-04, which is the land use plan amendments from public, semi-public to recreation open space, and ordinance 2205, which is the zoning change from R60 to MPL. What you have on the screen is two aerial vicinity maps. The first one is a larger scale where you can see a broader area of land. And you can see the property itself is at the southern end of the Hammock Park, and it includes three separate parcels. So the map to the right there is intended to show you and identify those three parcels, which are C, D, and E. The largest parcel to the west, there's a small sliver parcel in the middle, and then a second slightly wider parcel. So that's your C, D, and E. In total, it's 8.97 acres of land when you add all three of the parcels together. Little background on this request. So these parcels were actually, most people probably know, they were purchased in 2016. Two of them were. Actually, about 8.70 acres were purchased in 2016 from the Diocese of St. Petersburg, the Our Lady of Lourdes Church. This was part of their property. And they were purchased for, obviously, the intent of making them part of the Hammock Park. And then the previous piece was purchased, that sliver, that 0.27 acres, was actually purchased from the diocese back in 2010. And that ran north-south between the two parcels that were acquired, again, in 2016. So what we have is three parcels totaling 8.97 acres. And the request comes from the fact that the city did receive some grant funding from the state. And as a result, the state had a requirement that we place the appropriate zoning and land use for parkland on this to preserve it. That was the whole idea. I think if everybody recalls at the time, there's some sensitive and beautiful landscaping and hardwood and vegetation on this property. The intent was to save that. So this is meeting an obligation the state put on the city. And then obviously there's logic to beyond that, which is that city parkland is generally recreation open space land use and MPL zoning. That is just the common land use and zoning placed on parklands in the city. It would be consistent with the rest of the park as well. So to recap on the land use, we do have the three parcels you see here. All the existing land uses is public, semi-public, and we're proposing recreation open space across all three parcels. And then the overlying zoning district designation is actually R60, residential single family, and we are, of course, going to be placing MPL or municipal public land across all three parcels, consistent with the balance of the Hammock Park. So with that, the staff recommendation to the LPA this evening is to recommend approval of Ordinance 2204 to change the land use plan category of the subject properties, all three of them, from public, semi-public to recreation open space on the city's land use plan map. And then Ordinance 2205, which is to change the zoning district designation of the subject properties from single-family residential R60 to municipal public land on the city's official zoning map.
Are there any questions of Mr. DePasqua?
I've got one more item I want to follow up with on the presentation. Just so you know, this is what often happens when we change land use is after this process, meaning the LPA makes a recommendation, the first reading to the City Commission, then it is transmitted to Pinellas County, Forward Pinellas, for a formal land use plan change through the county. And the reason I say that is, you know that process, you're familiar with it. We went through it with the Gladys Douglas property. There's a series of meetings that need to happen before it will come back for second and final reading in front of the commission, and we expect that to happen in the fall. That process is 3 to 4 months. So after tonight's action, affirmative action presumably, first reading, we will make that transmission on behalf of the city. We will follow that through its meetings and bring it back probably in the fall, as I mentioned, for second and final readings to place the land use and the zoning on it. And with that, Madam Chairman, I would be glad to answer any questions you may have. I know there's a representative from Parks and Recreation here as well, if you have any questions of them.
Mr.
Joe,
Becerra?
parcel C, that we bought from the Archdiocese, is that correct? The big parcel?
All three of them were purchased from the diocese.
Okay, I'm just curious. Why is D and E linear and very,
I do not know how the lots became configured as they were. Again, they were privately owned until the city acquired them in 2010 and 2016. What I can tell you is, it appears that the 2010 follows a ditch line. That's that linear 2 and so I believe it was created to go around that drainage ditch line. So perhaps it was part of a redescribed meets and bounds, where you typically would draw around a feature. And I would guess that's probably the case here. These are unsubdivided lands, so they probably configured them as was necessary at the time.
all of them came from the Archdiocese?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Mr. DePasqua?
No questions?
Just a quick question. Have you heard from any of the residents
We have not.
joining?
We have not. No, we have not received comments for or against or just in general. My guess is most of the people who live out there already probably assumed probably saw what was happening. You know, I believe one of our planners did receive a phone call. So she mentioned that. Molly Cord is our planner one. She did mention she did get a phone call from somebody just clarifying what it was about. And obviously they were happy that it was being put into these land use and zoning categories.
Basically, there's really no change for them, really.
Yeah, it's been, my understanding, it's been sort of part of the park. And I think before the city acquired it, it was considered, I think most people didn't know where the lines were, so that it looked like it was part of the park. It was a natural addition, I understand.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? If the city staff person would like to come forward, if there are no other questions, or is that,
Parks?
She's indicating that unless, I guess if you had questions for her, but otherwise she's just here in case there were. We asked, obviously, a representative to be here.
certainly. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open it up to the public. If there's anyone in the public that wishes to speak to either of these ordinances, this would be your opportunity. Anyone in the public that wishes to speak to either of these ordinances, this is your chance. Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Members of the board,
So we're going to do 3 separate motions for this?
is that what you would prefer?
Is it just
We
the
have
2 ordinances or
just
3?
2, or do you want the application and then the 2
The
ordinances?
zoning?
I think the ordinances are the only one you need. We give every case an application number, but essentially we're talking about the 2 ordinances here.
Just the 2 ordinances?
Yes.
So I do want to say that I think it was a great acquisition. If the board will remember, the diocese was planning on building townhomes there or something like that, and everybody was against that. So I'm sure the neighbors are very pleased that's going to be part of the parks, which we need more of, just like the Gladys
So true.
property. It's great that we're purchasing those.
Super, thanks for
Well,
that.
the park as it is today is terrific. It's really great. So any addition to what we presently have there is an absolute positive. So this is a real win-win. I was just surprised that it took so long for us to do this change in the zoning.
Yeah, I think this is more of just a housekeeping item. It was something that the state gave us some time, I think gave the city some time to do. But we also wanted to wait till our new comprehensive plan was in place and do it under our new comprehensive plan. So, the city acquired it, it's going on 6 years ago. So it's been part of the park all that time. It's been city-owned all that time. And now this is, at least from a community development standpoint, this is sort of the final piece we're going to offer to make it formal.
Has the city made any improvements in this portion of the park yet? I haven't been there in years. I've been to the original park, and
I would have to defer to
been
Parks
great.
and Recreation on that. I believe they have, but I would not be the person to ask about that.
I'm sorry I made you come up here.
She wasn't sworn
Good
in.
evening, I'm Lainey Sheets, I'm the administration superintendent. Yes, we have. So, basically, as you heard already, the park is opening and functioning as it will in perpetuity. It's all completely accessible to the public. We have named trails through there. We added a formal name of a Highland Trail because it is the highland of the park, and we feel it was appropriate with our Scottish heritage. So, no, it's open, it's accessible. You can. It always functioned as part of the park. People, as Joey mentioned, everybody always thought it was part of the park. This just formalizes that process, and the state actually just did a site visit for the grant requirements just last week, so they were very pleased.
Great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Laney. Are there any other comments?
Sounds like an easy one to me.
Say. And so we'll have two motions then, one for each ordinance. So is there a motion for ordinance 22-04?
I'll recommend approval for ordinance 22-04 for the changing the land use designation to recreation open space.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval to the City Commission, the ordinance 22-04. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed by the same sign. Okay, we make that recommendation unanimously, and then I need a motion for ordinance 22-05.
I'll make a motion for approval of ordinance 22-05, zoning changes from R60 to MPL.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval for ordinance 22-05. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed by the same sign, and that motion carries unanimously as well. And we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the selection of alternate member of LPA. And I would just like to give us an overview for our process here. Just as an overview for everyone's benefit, the local planning agency is a 9-member board comprised of 7 regular members and 2 alternate members, all of which are appointed by the City Commission. We meet on the second Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. We are not a quasi-judicial board. However, we are structured in a quasi-judicial manner for the benefit of those who come before it. One of our members has announced that he is resigning, and he has agreed to stay on to serve on the board until his position is filled, which is why we are selecting an alternate to fill this future vacant position. We have 4 candidates to consider tonight. I have spoken with 3 of the 4 of them. One was not able to be reached by phone, and so that is the person that I have not been able to contact. I have 2 of the candidates are here this evening, Charlie Flatley and Stephen Hutchings, and those are the only 2 candidates that can be in attendance. The third one, Thomas Hoey, had a conflict for tonight and is not able to be here. Based on the prerequisite recommendations by the code, prospective candidates need to make application to the city, and they also need to attend at least 1 LPA meeting. So both,
Excuse me.
God bless you, Charlie Flatley and Stephen Hutchings have fulfilled that prerequisite of being in attendance and also having completed their application, which all of us have had a chance to review. So our process then is I will open the floor for nominations, and again, the only 2 that are qualified to be considered are Charlie Flatley and Stephen Hutchings. So I will open the floor up to nominations, and then if there are no other nominations, then...
Do we want to hear from them?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You both are certainly welcome to come forward. We definitely do not bite, and you're lucky there's very few people here tonight. This is very unique. Typically, we have more than staff here tonight. So you are both welcome to come forward. As I did mention previously, though, we have had an opportunity to review your application and any other auxiliary information that you have submitted. So if either of you are so inclined, you are welcome to come forward. And if you're not, we certainly understand.
Go for it. Go for it.
Come on.
It's a pleasure being here.
Stephen?
My name is Stephen Hutchings. I've been living in Dunedin for about 4 years. I moved here from Austin, Texas. and trying to get away from the growth there and came into the growth here. So that's why. But the reason I'll say that is I was in Austin, when Austin was not, probably about 22 years ago, and it started growing rapidly. And one thing that was important is to have smart growth, and, the Planning Commission play a big part in that. And so when I moved to Dunedin, I saw a lot of great things. I mean, it's a great city. It's probably one of the best cities in the world, and I'm serious about that. I've also been a part of the Florida Business Incubator, board member there here, and do a lot of other things within the community. And so I want to say thank you for considering me.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. We're so glad that you're a candidate.
Yeah, that's correct.
My name is Charlie Flatley. I've resided in Dunedin for a little less than 20 years now, down here in Florida for about 36. I've worked in the city of Clearwater for 36 years at the local Chrysler dealership there. And now I'm retired, have some extra time on my hands, and felt that I should come and do a little something for the city that I love. We just love being here and love living here and love the downtown, and thought that this would be a great start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as I mentioned previously, I will open the floor up for nominations. Mr. Massero?
We have asked them questions.
I wouldn't see why not. Yes.
I'm sorry. I apologize to both of you. I did have a request for I wanted to ask a question. So, Charlie, you were up here first. Can you, I'm sorry. Stephen, you were up here first. Come on. And you mentioned it in Texas. Were you involved in any of the planning meetings? Were you on any boards with the development that you mentioned?
Yes, I was. I was involved with the local planning agency, but I really got involved with the Transportation Commission. And it's funny because from a light rail standpoint, Austin just passed light rail about 2 years ago, and I actually went back to celebrate that because we tried for over 20 years to get light rail passed, and a lot of times you don't, get those things passed until people actually see, the pain and the traffic and everything that's, is great. And so they have a great plan that we really laid out about 22 years ago to get, certain lines that's there. And so I started out with the local planning commission, but I moved on to the transportation committee, and I've still been a member of that. However, by living here, I'm no longer a full-time member. I just kind of like, far away, just, check in and see what those guys are doing. That's there.
Okay, so you were part of the planning commission?
I was part of the, yes.
As like a citizens board like we are?
Yes, sir.
So it was a voluntary, like we are, is that?
Yes, it was voluntary. And it's important because, with the local citizens, one thing that we found out is, you always have a lot of businesses and other interested individuals or companies that, want to, do things their way. And so they have the same type of governmental volunteer board that's there that, is ran by the city manager as well.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions of Mr. Hutchings? Okay. Thanks again for coming back up.
Mr. Flatley, the same question of you.
Sure. I've not been a member of any boards such as this one, not been involved in city boards or anything of that nature. However, I was chairperson for PTEC in Pinellas County for the Automotive Apprenticeship Program, and also for Chrysler's apprenticeship program for automotive technicians, bringing in young people into the business trade.
But no experience with?
But no experience with a
planning,
board such as yourself.
Planning or zoning?
Or anything of that nature, but been following all of you online at all of the meetings for about the last 6 or 8 months.
Oh, great. Great. Well, thank you. I'm glad that they have that available for citizens to be able to see.
It is.
So
It's
you knew
great.
who I was
All of the
talking to
meetings
when I called you, right?
Online are great, yeah.
Well, great.
Very interesting.
But you've had management experience from.
Yes, I was fixed operations director at the Chrysler dealership for 36 years. I managed about 45 people below me directly and ran all of the property maintenance, repairs, anytime we built anything, we place grew tremendously in 36 years, as you can imagine. I have experience with blueprints, reading, things of that nature. So.
Great. Any other questions, Mr. Flatley?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for coming back. Okay, so I'm opening the floor to nominations. Nominations do not require a second.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Hutchins.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
Is that Steve?
Stephen.
Mr. Hutchins?
I'll second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations at this time? Hearing none, the nominations have been made, and the chair will announce to declare the nomination is closed. So we have Mr. Hutchins as our newest recommendation. Now, this will go toward to the City Commission, and they will make the final decision for us. But we will recommend, Joan McHale, our business manager, will make that recommendation to the City Commission. I'm not sure whether that, it probably won't get on this next meeting, maybe whenever, but it will be soon, and you will be notified. Now, Mr. Flatley, I want you to know that there will be additional openings this year because some of our board is ending their terms.
Don't give up.
Not because they want
Two
to.
of us, to be exact, actually.
Three.
Yes.
Oh, three?
Three.
Three.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, three.
So you do not need to reapply, and you have fulfilled your prerequisite of attending a meeting. But I want you to be aware that, this is something to look forward to.
What do we do about it?
Unless Mr. Massaro and
We're
I
out.
cash in our chips sooner, I'm not sure.
I'm going to use my 2 unexcused absences for November and December.
So congratulations, Mr. Hutchins, and Mr. Flatley, again, please. We appreciate
Come
you
back.
both being here, yes.
Keep watching.
Yes, but that will stay active. We want you to continue to have your application active for this. It's seldom that we have openings, and Dr. Broom is our most recent candidate that just became a part of us in March. So we're very pleased that he's with us, and so we're grateful for Mr. Hutchins to have you a part of us as well. Are there any other questions regarding the application process?
Madam
Yes.
Chairman, I was just going to say, I don't know your normal procedure for nominations, but could we either do by consensus or do a vote to ensure?
Yes, that's a
that-
great idea. I
Thank you.
apologize because, it does say, and these are the nomination process for new members. Chair will open the floor for nominations. Each member, upon recognition, will have the right to make a nomination. Nominations don't need to be seconded. When all nominations have been made, Chair will also announce and declare nominations closed. And if only one member is nominated for the vacancy, that person shall be recommended to the City Commission to fill the vacancy. So, but if you would like a voice vote, would that be?
I think that would be good, just
All right.
because, then you'll hear from all the board, and since it
Okay.
is a board's recommendation.
Certainly. So at this time, I would like the nomination is closed, and Stephen Hutchins is the nominee. Mr. Wylensky, would you like to give us your, do you want
I approve it.
You can just do all in favor.
all those in favor of Stephen Hutchins, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? Thank you. Good choice, yes. All right, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, and that is going to be our, no, we have informational items from our sustainability director, which is Natalie Gass.
So just real briefly, we asked Natalie to be here this evening. I think there were some questions Mr. Robert brought up, and there was just overall inquiries about our sustainability program. And so obviously Natalie has agreed to come here, talk to you a little bit about that, and certainly answer any questions you may have. So I want to thank her for being here.
Thank you very much, Natalie.
Well, good evening. Again, Natalie Gass. I appreciate the invite, and I serve as the Sustainability Program Coordinator for the City of Dunedin. And as it is Earth Month, I'm very excited to be here with you, chatting about our sustainability matrix, as well as the new City Hall and the different components of sustainability that have been integrated into the planning and construction process of that program and that project. So I'll just kind of give you, those are kind of the two topics. I don't know if you want me to just talk about one and then go through questions, or talk about both, and then we have questions.
Thank you. I'm sorry Mr. Roberts isn't here, but he is the one that had proposed that question last month. So we'll take all the information you'd like to give us.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll start with the new City Hall. And as I stated, sustainability has been integrated from the beginning of the project, from its planning and development to the construction phase that we're in now. This encompasses numerous sustainability initiatives and development in quite a few different categories. And so basically we're going to be certifying it through the Green Globes organization. It's a third-party program that goes through all of the different components, compiles all of the data and information of what's going into this building. Just to give a little highlight of some of the categories that will be awarded, will be tree preservation, addressing the heat island effect, creating efficiency in the building's envelope, reducing electrical demands, minimizing the use of raw materials, and incorporating the use of solar power. In terms of the solar power, there is a 100 kilowatt solar power system designed for the south side of the building, and that is going to bring clean, localized energy to the building. And we are also working with Duke Energy, a part of their Clean Energy Connection program. So we're going to be using on-site and off-site solar to be powering City Hall. And Duke is working on incorporating off-site solar in the middle of the state, and they will start, that will be ready. It will be coming online very shortly in June and July.
How do they do that, Natalie, if it's off-site? How are they implementing that?
So it's a program that's open to municipalities, businesses, and they're going to be opening it up to the public as well. You subscribe to a certain percentage of your energy. Since there was such a popular demand, when we submitted, we wanted to do 100% of our city energy needs, and that kind of like RECs, which would be credits coming back. So that solar energy isn't directly coming into your city building. It's more about cleaning the entire grid and creating more of a regional approach to clean energy, which is what we want to support as well. And because of the popularity, they bumped everyone down to 40% of our request, but that's okay. At least it's something, it's getting us moving forward, and that will then be coupled with the on-site solar. I can move on to our sustainability matrix. So projects that come before the Design Review Committee, DRC, that are 5,000 square feet or greater or have 5 units or more will trigger the sustainability matrix. And that is an entire document of 320 possible points. All developers and projects that trigger the sustainability matrix do have to get a minimum of 100 points out of the total. And they are required to achieve at least points in at least 4 of the categories out of 6 of the categories that are available. So we do this in 3 steps, where at the beginning of the process, the developer or the group will submit the points that they're hoping to really push forward in their project. We always encourage them to go over the 100, obviously, and I think, for most of the time, that's what we receive. Developers have a liking to this, and they want to incorporate that into their building. So a lot of times they do go over the 100, and I think that's also good because it's a buffer. In case something happens during the planning or the construction phase, they can go back and switch points around, which I think was maybe a question
I was just
last
recalling
time.
that, yes, that was what happens if they choose not to fulfill all those, and I do recall that from rereading those minutes, so, yes. Has that ever happened?
So right now, I'm in the process of reviewing and working with staff to get a list of those completed projects and go through to see what was submitted, what was actually obtained, and then be able to orchestrate some of the site visits to make sure that's actually happened. But at this point, I'm not sure. I can't answer that question, but I'm happy to follow up. As part of the code, they're not required to inform us of any changes. As long as you're hitting the 100 minimum points in at least 4 categories, then you're all set.
I know we were not wanting you to have to go over and above what you already do, which is beyond the call of duty, and so we were not trying to give you more work. I remember we did talk about that at the meeting, that we didn't want you to have to do a whole lot of extra work. So I'm sorry if this is creating more for you, but I know that that's important for us to know. That was a question that I don't think very many of us had even considered. What happens if they've achieved this for our approval, and then if they don't? So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you the one that has to physically go out and inspect everything?
Yes.
So you go to each project and review the sustainability matrix,
I have yet to conduct any
okay?
site visits yet, but that is what I'm planning.
That's the plan.
Yes, that's
Okay.
that's the process, just to solidify that everything is there that was
Right.
submitted.
What's the predicted longevity of the city hall?
75 years?
That's it? No, I just think the way it's going to be built, I mean, the way it's going up,
We won't
it's,
be around.
Be
I know.
underwater.
It won't make any
I mean, that's where you want to go when a bad storm comes in.
It's going to be a reef in 75 years.
That's true.
Thank you. That's all I had.
They
Thank you.
don't build them like they used to,
Where's a good pyramid?
Right.
Is, the city hall is not going to be 100% sustainable then, right? The J Hotel is going to be 100% sustainable, but the city hall will not be then?
100% net zero, or?
Yes, I guess so.
Okay, gotcha. No, it won't be 100% net zero in terms of the solar being installed won't cover the entire demand for the energy needs of the building. A lot of times, from just what I've heard from other municipalities, it's very rare to actually achieve net zero on a city building. Most times you're getting 20 to 30%, higher is 60%. But like I mentioned before, we're coupling it with the Clean Energy Connection program to not only encourage the on-site local solar, but also regional solar in cleaning our grid.
That's great. Sidebar note also, congratulations, because I know that you've done such a great job with the DREAM team, and one of our, unfortunately, is not here tonight, Charles Fortin had been a part of that. He was our rep from the LPA on the DREAM team, but I know that you've just recently received high accolades. Well, you've been receiving high accolades, but, you've just accomplished so much with that. So thank you for including our group and all the other committees that you did.
Yeah, I've appreciated all of your expertise and everything that you do for the city, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any questions, Natalie? No? Thank you for taking your time out to meet with us about this. It's very kind of you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, we'll move on to our open forum. This is an opportunity for board members to discuss items that are not otherwise on the agenda.
I have an item,
Okay.
and I need direction from our attorney as to whether or not I can ask this question. Okay? I have a question in regard to our last meeting, ordinance 22-08. It's the overlay. And I wanted to question George on something. Can I do that? I know this This is still going through the city commission, and, we've had our shot at it, but I have a question that I need some clarification on.
Yes, I mean, the matter isn't before the board. The board has already taken its action or made its recommendation, but you just have a personal question of inquiry. You can go ahead and ask the
I do.
question.
Thank you. George? The overlay plan and the recommendation made by our consultant, and I'm sorry to bring this back up through y'all, I just should have asked this question last month but didn't. There was the daylight plane issue. There was the issue of the architectural styles, okay? And there was, I believe, the issue about garage setbacks, okay? And the question that I really had is that all three of those items that were covered by the consultant, and he did make a recommendation, and city staff agreed with the recommendations that they made. All three of those items were very architecturally oriented, okay? My question really is, and I should have asked it last month, why didn't we ask the Architectural Review Board to give a recommendation on that overlay plan before it came before us on the agenda? I would have been interested in hearing what our architects on our board felt about the selections that not only we made, staff made, and our consultant made.
No, excellent question, Mr. Massaro. The ARC was actually part of a stakeholder group meeting early on, so they were, the whole entire board was actually party to some of the development of that.
The Architectural Review Board?
The ARC, the Architectural Review Committee. And, the second reason that they probably didn't see it was because we were following the process that's outlined in the Land Development Code for legislative approvals. And they're not part of that mix from a recommendation standpoint, but they were included at the very beginning and throughout much of the process from the stakeholder.
They didn't, there was no information given to us that they, did review it. There was no recommendation that they made.
So they didn't make a recommendation because the process doesn't really permit that. However, some of your backup included some of the notes from those stakeholder meetings, and if you go back, you'll see that they had some comments as part of that initial review.
Okay. That's in commission review right now?
Correct.
And I guess it won't go back to the Architectural Review Board for any kind of...
No, not so. Assuming that the commission approves the request as proposed, they sit as basically a recommending body back to staff for certain types of situations when it comes to architecture, but it won't go back to them for any type of approval that's within the commission's realm at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I don't understand the legal side of all of that, but, we have a board of architects, professionals, and we are looking at an overlay plan that has a lot to do with the architecture of the neighborhoods, has to do with this new daylight plane issue, and it has to do with the architectural approvable design styles of the homes within that overlay. I would have thought that a direct recommendation by those professionals, our board, would have been very appropriate. So, but that's my own personal thinking.
Makes perfect sense. I think it's really about process and procedure with respect to this one. I think we wanted to be very careful that we followed what the code requires us to do and for this type of ordinance approval. But
Okay.
certainly understood.
Okay. I just made my point. So.
Yep. No, thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are there any questions or?
I do. There's a small project going on, I believe it's on Wilson, where Wilson intersects with Douglas, right behind Purley's, where they've dug a big hole, and it's just been sitting there for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's Grant Street Inn. That's the
That's
project
the
with
boot-
22-room.
Boutique hotel we approved.
I thought, I know I approved, but I thought overall it was rejected for some reason, no?
No, well, maybe we didn't recommend it, but the city
City did.
may have said
Okay,
no
that's
problem.
what happened then, okay. All right, all
That's
right.
called the Grant Street Inn.
Yeah, no, I remember it, because I remember approving it, but I was
City
shot
Commission did
down.
approve that some time ago, but that is the same group, the same development team that's doing the J Hotel. So that is going to be associated with the Blue Jays as well.
Oh, so it has changed hands, because it was
It was SD.
the guy that was proposing it before,
It was Ron Coleman's before. Is
It's
it
still
it
is.
was a doctor that was backing it before.
I knew,
Dr. Coconut?
Rod was,
I knew Rod was involved
Yeah.
with it when it came in front of us, but he's not anymore, or he is?
SDG is
Yeah.
the architect of
Okay.
record.
Yeah, then he's.
Yeah. But it's Mr. Anderson, Doug Anderson's group is the one that is doing that project.
Because it was a doctor that lived across the street who bought the property that wanted wasn't a boutique, what was it? And I think it was shot down just because of the frequency that people are going to be coming in and out of his buildings.
Bed and breakfast, was it?
Something like that. But it was shot down and
By us.
by us.
Okay, where is
But
this
it went
project
forward with-
located at that you're talking, referring to?
Wilson, right?
Oh,
Actually,
Grant.
It's 418 Grant Street.
Grant,
Grant.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
There you go.
That was the motor
Grant.
hotel.
Yes,
We shut that down.
correct.
yes.
The city
The
did
city
not.
did
The
not.
city did
Well,
not.
the city did not, and I know why.
Well, I'm still not understanding the ownership, because again, it was purchased by a doctor who lived across the street, and he wanted to develop it. And I guess after we shot it down, someone else bought it from him, and that's who's doing it now, the people that own.
I don't know anything
Okay.
about the chain of title. What I can tell you is
Well,
certainly it's the folks that are doing it now is Doug Anderson's team.
you know, that was the project that really programmed our A, B, and C streets as far as usage, okay? Because our biggest complaint
Right.
on that project was the usage within that neighborhood.
It was, yeah.
And after that got approved, there was enough negative conversation about that we modified and approved the usage on A, B, and C streets.
Okay.
So
Glad you brought that up.
it won't happen again.
There you go.
Can you just give a quick, what an A, B, C, and C street is?
Here's
There's it.
our city planner.
Okay.
So in our downtown core is a zoning district in predominantly used in our downtown area, and it's a very broad zoning district. It allows a lot of different uses. And so what Mr. Macero is talking about is the city has, to go along with that zoning, has a street type map, A, B, and C streets. And each one of those has a set of standards in it. So the best way to do it is you could be in DCA, DCB, or DCC. And so it drives what uses could be allowed if it's in A, B, or C. It also drives the maximum height and some other requirements for step backs and things. So I think what Mr. Macero is alluding to with the changes is as a result of some uses being at least viewed as somewhat incompatible with the surrounding area, the changes were made to the allowable types of uses on B Street specifically to have them more residentially oriented, moving more of the commercial mixed use to the A and C Street. So if you get a chance in our land development code, you'll see in our downtown core that there's this map with the 3 colors on it, and it's the street that's abutting the property.
Super.
Very effective.
Right, and that street is a mixed use.
That street, Grant Street now is
Was.
a B, I believe.
Yeah.
It's a DC with a B label. So some of the things that would have been previously perhaps allowed there are no longer going to be allowed as permitted uses.
Thank you.
You're very
It
welcome.
was a good move, a good change to our code.
Is there anything else that we want to discuss for open forum? Okay, I'll open this up to citizen input. If there's anyone that has an opportunity in this, any citizen that would like to speak about anything that's not on the agenda. This is new for us. We have not had this particular bullet on our agenda, and I was told that it is so that there's a continuity for all the different committees, that we have this kind of format now. So it's not your imagination, it is new. No citizens want to give us any input, okay? I'd like to announce that our next meeting will be on May 11th at 6 o'clock here at City Hall. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion for adjournment?
All those, second?
Second.
Okay. Multiple seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and our candidates, congratulations, and thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you for watching this City of Dunedin government meeting. If you'd like to review any part of this meeting or watch any previous government meeting coverage, you can watch these meetings online anytime through the city's website, dunedingov.com. Stay connected with everything Dunedin. Follow the city on this channel and on the city's Facebook page, through Twitter, and on the city's YouTube channel. Thanks again for watching this Dunedin television production.